All right, so today we're diving into some photography fundamentals.
Photography fundamentals.
Yeah, you've given us a pretty interesting mix of sources here.
Right.
Excerpts from PhotoNet Learn Photography
Okay.
and some online articles that really get you thinking about things.
Yeah,
Sounds like you're really ready to take your photography to the next level,
absolutely.
and we're here to help you do just that.
I think one of the most important things to remember with photography is that, a good eye can sometimes
Yeah.
beat out fancy gear.
Oh, absolutely.
I once saw this incredible black and white portrait,
Okay.
really moving, and it was taken with a disposable camera.
Wow.
The photographer just nailed the composition, the lighting, the raw emotion.
Yeah. You don't see that every day.
It's really a testament to that idea that you don't need
right.
the fanciest equipment to take incredible pictures.
That makes a lot of sense, especially these days with so much talk about
Yeah.
expensive cameras and needing to have the latest and greatest. Right.
You also had a good point about the power of fundamentals.
Oh, yeah.
That 80-20 rule that's mentioned in one of the sources.
The 80-20 rule.
Mastering 20% of the core techniques
Gets you 80% of the results.
gives you 80% of the results.
Yeah.
That's a great philosophy.
Yeah.
But where do we even begin with that 20%?
Well, let's start with something that many people might overlook,
Okay.
and that's the humble point-and-shoot camera.
Okay, the point and shoot.
Yeah, there's this story in PhotoNet about a photographer
Okay.
at an MIT graduation.
Mm-hmm.
He's got, the top-of-the-line Canon
Yeah.
teleconverter, the works.
Great.
But there's this woman standing nearby,
Okay.
and she just has a simple point-and-shoot.
Mm.
And even he admits that she might get the better shots of Bill Clinton.
Wow, that's humbling.
Isn't it?
It is. But I get it. Sometimes it's about being quick and capturing the moment
Absolutely.
before it's gone.
Yes.
And there was this user comment about the Yashica D5.
That really stuck with me. They said it actually outperforms their Nikon in terms of speed and spontaneity,
That's impressive.
which is really interesting to think about.
Yeah, it really speaks to
Yeah.
how sometimes the best camera is the one that you have with you
Right.
that's ready to capture the moment.
Exactly. And sometimes maybe you don't need all those
Yeah.
bells and whistles and manual settings and all of that.
Right.
So even without all of those manual settings, what are some core techniques that you
Yeah.
can use with a point and shoot?
Well, pre-focusing, for instance.
Okay, pre-focusing. So.
Instead of letting the camera decide where to focus, you half press the shutter button
Okay.
to lock focus where you want it,
Okay.
and then you recompose the shot
Gotcha.
before you fully press the shutter button.
So I'm kind of taking control a little bit, even
Exactly.
with the limited settings.
Yeah, you're telling the camera,
Okay.
this is where I want you to focus.
Right.
Not the other way around.
Okay. What about exposure? Any tricks there for point-and-shoot users?
Well, book talks about being mindful of where you focus when you half press.
Mm-hmm.
Try to avoid extremes like a pure black or white background.
Okay.
Because a lot of point-and-shoot cameras determine exposure
Okay.
based on the brightness of that focus point,
Oh, I see.
and that can sometimes throw off your shot.
Okay. That's a good tip to keep in mind.
Yeah, avoid those extremes.
So I have to bring up this quote from one of the articles about sunlight.
Okay.
He spoke with the wisdom that can only come from experience, like a guy who went blind because he looked at a solar eclipse.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
I thought that was funny.
It is funny, but it really speaks to
Yeah.
how crucial light is in photography,
Mm-hmm.
especially natural light like sunlight.
Yeah.
But it's not as simple as just go outside and shoot.
Right.
Its quality changes drastically throughout the day,
Okay.
impacting the mood and the look of your photos.
So like golden hour,
Exactly.
early morning, late afternoon light.
Yeah, the warm, flattering light
Yeah.
that everybody loves.
So midday sun is kind of a no-go then?
It can be tricky.
Okay.
You've got strong shadows,
Mm-hmm.
high contrast.
Right.
That's why landscape photographers often prefer the
Right.
softer times of day.
So is there anything you can do if you're stuck shooting in the middle of the day?
You have choices even then.
Okay.
The source material actually recommends sometimes excluding
Yep.
an overcast sky
Okay.
altogether.
If it's boring.
Yeah, if it's a boring overcast sky.
Okay.
They use an example picture from Bomarzo, Italy.
Okay.
It can make a huge difference in how the photo feels.
So less is more sometimes when it comes to the sky.
Exactly.
You were talking about depth of field earlier, and there was something in the film article that I didn't quite grasp.
Okay.
The author uses a 600 millimeter lens.
600 millimeter lens.
Wow, serious telephoto.
Okay.
At f4 or f5.6, which I thought was a relatively closed aperture.
Right.
But they still get that blurry background. Uh-huh.
And I thought smaller apertures mean everything's in focus.
That's where a lot of people get tripped up.
Okay.
Depth of field isn't just about the aperture.
Okay.
It's a combination of things.
Yeah.
It's the aperture size, not just the f number.
Okay.
The focal length of your lens,
Uh-huh.
and the distance to your subject.
Oh, okay.
They all play a part.
I see.
You know, a large aperture on a telephoto,
Yeah.
it acts like a magnifying glass, isolating your subject.
Okay.
But a wide-angle lens at f22,
Yeah.
that takes in the whole scene, you know, keeps more in focus.
So it's all about choosing the right tool.
Exactly.
For the look.
For the story you want to tell.
For the story that you want to tell. Okay, so even if I don't have full aperture control on my camera,
Sure.
just understanding how those elements interact
Right.
can help me make better choices
Absolutely.
when composing a shot.
Yeah. You start to see how it's not about limitations,
Yeah.
but about working with what you have
I like that mindset.
to create something interesting. Okay, so another topic I wanted to touch on is macro photography.
Macro photography.
Yeah. The source material mentioned challenges in achieving a 1-to-1 reproduction ratio with a 50 millimeter lens.
Okay.
Which got me thinking, what exactly does that mean?
Well, first off, 1-to-1 reproduction simply means capturing your subject at life size.
Okay.
On the sensor.
Okay.
So a 1-to-1 shot of a dime means the image of that dime on your sensor is literally the same size as the actual dime.
Gotcha. Okay, that clarifies it. So how do you get into that macro world if your lens doesn't focus that close?
Well, there are a few ways to play with that. Close-up lenses are a great starting point.
Okay, close-up lenses.
Essentially, they're magnifying glasses that you attach to your existing lens.
Okay.
Simple and affordable.
So you're basically just boosting the magnification.
Exactly. You're giving your lens
Yeah.
a little extra power to focus closer.
What are some other options?
You can also try extension tubes.
Okay, extension tubes.
They fit between the camera body and the lens,
Wow.
increasing the distance, which leads to greater magnification.
So you're extending the lens's focusing range.
Exactly.
Clever. What else?
For extreme close-ups, there are reversing rings.
Reversing rings.
These let you mount a lens backwards on your camera.
Oh, wow.
Now, it requires some practice, but it can open up some really unique possibilities.
I'm seeing a theme here. It's all about getting creative with the gear that you have.
Absolutely.
Like finding hidden superpowers in your camera bag.
That's a great way to put it. And macro photography in particular
Yeah.
has this whole other set of considerations.
Okay, like what?
Well, you have to think about effective f-stop.
Effective stop. I haven't come across that term before.
It's all about how exposure and depth of field are affected at high magnifications.
Oh,
So basically, as you increase magnification,
yeah.
the light reaching the sensor decreases,
Okay.
and your depth of field becomes razor thin.
Interesting.
So you might need to adjust your settings to compensate. For example, you might need to use a slower shutter speed or a wider aperture to get a properly exposed image.
Right.
And even at a seemingly small aperture, your depth of field might be so shallow that only a tiny portion of your subject is in focus.
That makes sense. So it's like a whole new set of rules.
It is.
Yeah.
But that's part of the fun, right?
Yeah.
Exploring these different approaches and mastering new techniques.
Absolutely. There's a user comment that mentions using an enlarger lens on a bellows for macro photography.
Oh, wow. An enlarger lens.
Which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah, that's not something you hear every day.
Yeah, an enlarger lens.
Right. They mentioned that it's great for flat field work, like copying slides or photographing coins,
Okay.
because of its unique optical qualities.
That's really cool. It just shows that there's always something new to learn and experiment with in photography.
Absolutely.
So we've talked point and shoot techniques, light depth of field, and macro photography. Are we starting to see that 20% emerge?
I think so.
Those core principles that can make all the difference.
Yeah, it all comes back to that idea we started with. It's not about the gear.
Right.
It's about understanding the fundamentals and applying them creatively.
You can capture incredible images.
Absolutely.
With even the simplest tools.
Yes.
If you have a good eye and a bit of know-how.
Like that disposable camera portrait.
Right. Pure vision.
Remember?
It's pretty inspiring, actually. It makes me want to grab my camera and just start shooting.
That's just
experimenting with everything we've discussed.
I love it.
Do you have any final words of wisdom
Absolutely.
for our listener as they continue their photography journey?
Don't get bogged down by the expensive camera mystique.
Okay.
It's easy to fall into that trap of thinking you need the latest and greatest gear to create great work.
I see that all the time.
But the truth is,
Yeah,
some of the most iconic photos in history were captured with relatively basic cameras.
that's a good point.
It really is.
There's a user comment that really resonated with me on that point.
Okay.
They asked, is expensive gear truly necessary
That's a great question.
for great photography?
It is a great question, and the answer is,
Yeah.
it depends.
I-
High-end equipment can offer advantages.
Like what?
Better low-light performance,
Right.
faster autofocus, higher resolution.
Mm-hmm.
But those are just tools.
Tools.
They can help you achieve your vision more easily in certain situations,
Right.
but they don't guarantee a good photograph.
It still comes down to the photographer
It does.
and their vision.
It's the photographer's eye, their understanding of light and composition,
Mm-hmm.
their ability to tell a story that truly brings an image to life.
So it's more about mastering the fundamentals and developing your own unique style
I think so.
than having the most expensive gear.
It's about using the tools that you have
Yeah.
to tell your story.
This deep dive has been such a good reminder of that. I'm feeling inspired to just grab my camera, even my trusty point and shoot,
Love it.
and get out there and experiment with everything we've discussed.
That's the spirit. Explore, play, have fun.
Yeah,
Don't be afraid to break the rules,
right.
to push the boundaries of your creativity.
Mm-hmm.
The world is your canvas, and the possibilities are endless.
I love that. So to wrap things up, what would be your one key takeaway
Okay.
for our listener today?
Focus on honing your skills and developing your unique photographic voice.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get caught up in the gear race. Remember, the most important tool you have is your eye, your vision, your ability to see the world in a way that's uniquely yours. Go out there and capture it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great advice. Thanks for joining us today.
It's been a pleasure.
And we'll see you next time for part 2 of our deep dive on photography fundamentals.
Got it. So you're basically giving your lens a little boost to help it focus closer.
Okay, cool. What are some other options?
So you can also try extension tubes.
Extension tubes. Okay.
Yeah, they fit between the camera body and the lens, increasing the distance between the two,
Uh-huh.
and that leads to greater magnification.
So you're extending the lens focusing range.
Right.
Very cool. What else?
Well, for really extreme close-ups, you can use reversing rings.
Reversing rings?
These actually let you mount the lens backwards under your camera.
Backwards.
Yeah, I know it sounds a little crazy,
Yeah,
but it does require some practice.
I bet.
But it can open up some really interesting creative possibilities.
I'm noticing a theme here. It's all about,
What's that?
finding those creative ways to use the gear that you have.
Oh, absolutely.
Almost like you're unlocking hidden superpowers in your camera bag.
I love that. And macro photography
Yeah.
especially has this whole other set of considerations.
Okay, like what?
Well, you have to think about what's called effective stop.
Effective f-stop. Okay, I'm not familiar with that one.
It's basically how exposure and depth of field
Okay.
change at those high magnifications.
Okay.
So as you increase the magnification, the light that actually reaches the sensor decreases.
I see.
And the depth of field gets really, really thin.
Yeah.
You might need to actually change your settings
Okay.
to make up for that.
Well, like what?
For example,
Yeah.
you might need to use a slower shutter speed,
Uh-huh.
or you might need to open up the aperture to let more light in.
Okay, to get a good exposure.
Exactly. And even if you're using a small aperture,
Yeah.
your depth of field might be so shallow that only a tiny little part of your subject is in focus.
So it's like a whole new set of rules to learn.
Kind of, but that's part of the fun, right?
Yeah.
Exploring these different techniques and, mastering them.
I agree. There's a user comment that mentions using an enlarger lens on a bellows for macro photography.
An enlarger lens
Oh, I thought it was interesting.
on a bellows. Wow, that's not something you hear every day.
Yeah, an enlarger lens.
Yeah, they said it's great for flat field work like copying slides or photographing coins
Okay.
because of its, unique optical properties.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. It just shows, there's always something new to learn
Yeah.
and experiment with in photography.
Absolutely.
We've covered point and shoot techniques, light depth of field macro photography.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Are we starting to see that 20% come together?
I think so.
Those core principles?
It all comes back to that idea that we talked about at the beginning.
Okay.
It's not about the gear.
Right.
It's about understanding the fundamentals and using them creatively.
It really is amazing what you can do with even the simplest camera.
Yeah.
If you have a good eye
Yeah.
and a little know-how.
like that disposable camera portrait, remember?
Right. Pure vision.
Pure vision.
It's pretty inspiring. It makes me want to just grab my camera
Do it.
and go out there and start shooting.
I love it.
Experiment with everything we've talked about.
Yeah, explore, play, have fun.
So do you have any final words of wisdom?
Let's see, for our listeners, as they continue on their photography journey. Absolutely, don't get bogged down in the expensive camera mystique.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's so easy to fall into that trap.
It is.
Of thinking you need the latest and greatest gear to create great work.
Right.
The truth is, though, some of the most iconic photos in history were captured with relatively simple cameras.
That's a good point.
It's really all about the photographer's vision and skill.
There's a user comment that really resonated with me about that.
Oh, yeah.
They asked, is expensive gear truly necessary for great photography?
That's a great question.
What are your thoughts?
You know, it depends.
Okay.
High-end gear can offer advantages.
Of course.
Like better low-light performance, faster autofocus, higher resolution.
Right.
But those are really just tools.
Right. Yeah.
They can help you achieve your vision more easily.
Yeah.
In certain situations.
Makes sense.
But they don't guarantee a good photograph.
It still comes down to the photographer.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's the photographer's eye, their understanding of light and composition, their ability to tell a story.
Right.
That makes a truly great photograph.
So it's more about mastering the fundamentals and developing your own style than having the most expensive gear.
The best camera is often the one that you have with you.
Right.
The one that you're comfortable using, the one that allows you to capture those moments.
This deep dive has been such a good reminder of that.
I'm glad to hear that.
I'm feeling inspired to just grab my camera,
Yeah.
even my point and shoot.
Love it.
And just go out there and experiment with everything we've talked about.
I love it.
You know?
Play around. Explore, play, have fun.
Have fun with it. Yeah.
Don't be afraid to, push the limits of your creativity. Break the rules a little bit.
Yeah.
The world is your canvas.
I love
The possibilities are endless.
So to wrap things up, what would be your one key takeaway for our listener today?
I would say focus on really honing your skills.
Okay.
And developing your own unique style. Don't get caught up in the gear race. The most important tool you have is your eye, your vision, your ability to see the world in a way that's uniquely yours.
I love that. Great advice. Thanks for joining us today.
It's been a pleasure. Yeah, go out there and capture it.
That's great advice. Thanks for joining us today.
It's been my pleasure.
And we'll see you next time for the conclusion of our deep dive into photography fundamentals.
You can download the book for free from our website.